Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Alberta Landlord Shoptalk show. I am one of your hosts, MacKenzie Wilson, alongside me, coming out from a new location up in beautiful Edmonton, Alberta, who are still in the playoffs, Chris Noble. How are you doing tonight, Chris?
Very good, Mac. I'm so excited about the show tonight. This is, this is where we're building this community that we have for landlords to learn. And tonight you are going to learn a lot. So I hope if you're watching the show and you know some other landlords, you better be nudging them, because this is the place you want to be. You want to ask the questions, you want to jump in here. And this is why we have this interactive show that we put on. So we have, go ahead, Mac, you're the best at this. So tell us what we have.
This is going to be a really fun show. Something, Chris, I know we've been working on in the background, particularly using your connections. You kind of got our guest speaker lined up. I think we've been at this, but we've had the idea since last year and probably the better part of this year, getting the timelines to come together. But I think this is the first of its kind. We've got a show where we're talking about a law enforcement unit that deals explicitly in properties, and us as landlords play a big role as a stakeholder in what this unit does. And there's a lot of good information we can learn tonight, how to deal with problem properties, and maybe in particular if you've got a problem tenant that has illegal activity. We might get some tips away tonight how to properly deal with that, maybe how to approach it, Chris. And if and you know what you mentioned too in our previews when we talked about the show last year, I thought was really important is what is our legal responsibility as a landlord who owns the property if we know there's illegal activity going on or we suspect there's illegal activity going on. What's that risk to us as being the landlords too? So I think we've got a great opportunity to learn about that. You
want to stay tuned, because you're going to find out what your responsibilities are and just how much this can cost you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to adjust the layer. Oh, before we flipped into it, I've got something here. I'm going to show some folks. So I know we've kind of been doing different shows over the last couple of weeks, but I got a bunch of books that came in. I've got some free giveaways to hand off to some of the folks from a couple of shows together. So those will get in the mail here very soon. So just want to say a special thanks to Robinson Smith, who provided some copies of his books for us. So great way to get back to the community. Yeah, folks, if you have tuned in, come on and say hi. We've got Christine, as always, from Langley, BC, Lewis here in Calgary, as well as Gidra. Hey, Gidra, she's also one of our admins on the community. And look at this, Dawn with Edmonton Eviction Services tuning in as well. So, folks, glad to have you guys all here, right on for chipping in and saying hi. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping and get our guest up on the show. Chris, where's the best place for people to find us?
Find us on our shows?
On YouTube.
Find us on YouTube at findgreattenants.com.
Awesome. Love it.
It was a trick question. You were testing me. I am not. There's a reason our picture, Mac, is up there. One guy holding the drill and one guy's holding the computer. So yeah, okay, we'll test you, Mac. He says, what's better, DeWalt or Milwaukee?
I hear Milwaukee all the way.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go. So, all right, good enough.
We're just kind of killing time here so we can get people up, get them up and running here. So we don't want them, don't want too many.
We're at 9 now, and we're slowly counting. But you know what? Let's start this conversation. Let's use the most of this hour that we've got with Andrew, and let's bring him on. So, folks, we've got Andrew with the scan unit. Andrew, thanks for joining with us tonight.
Thanks for having me tonight. Thank you.
Perfect. Awesome.
Welcome, Andrew.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So folks, Andrew, I was trying to describe, so you're part of a sheriff's unit called SCAN, which stands for Safer Communities and Neighbourhoods. You guys are probably unique in the sense that you guys specifically focus on unique properties. But for the people that don't know what SCAN is, maybe give us a quick overview of what you guys are and how you guys differ from other law enforcement units, say like RCMP or say the Calgary Police Force.
Yeah, for sure. So our unit is part of the Alberta Sheriff branch, and we're under the SCAN unit, which is an investigative team comprised of 9 investigators right now, in which we enforce what's called the SCAN Act. So our team goes along with what the act is. So there is an actual civil act out there in which can hold landlords and owners of property accountable for the activity happening at their property, and whether they're aware of it or not, sometimes that's where we come in to to bring them apprised of what's actually happening at their property. So this act came back into place in 2008 in Alberta, and right now there's quite a few other provinces that have it, some that don't. But I would say we're pretty unique in the sense that we work hand in hand with EPS, as well as RCMP, CPS, and very little slightly as we deal for our unit specifically with the owners of that property that we're investigating. Our complaints come through confidential community complainants. If we don't have that and somebody being affected by the activity occurring at your property, then unfortunately we don't generate a complaint. We'll get complaints from other police agencies, but we also have to advise them that we'll need a community's complaint where somebody's actually living in that community and affected by what's happening at that property.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do we want to go into what typical examples of complaints that you guys deal with?
So under our act, we have specified use offenses in which we can investigate, and typically that surrounds drug trafficking. That's our biggest thing that we deal with on a daily basis is through drug trafficking. And then as well as sometimes we get into gang activity as well that falls under our act also.
Okay. And the one thing I know we're talking before we jumped live on the show here was you mentioned that the legislation or the act that you guys enforce is a civil act, which is a little bit different than again from the police forces where they typically enforce, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, it's criminal acts or yeah. Okay. So a police they say the police will come in, they may arrest someone for doing an illegal activity, could be at your rental, could not be. That person gets charged, gets dealt with, and then if they are released, they come back to the property. Do you guys differ in your enforcement strategy where it maybe has a little bit more teeth you were saying before?
Yeah, so that person, they'll get released, they'll get a release order where it says they must reside at this address, which happen to be your property that you own, and they think they're good and clear. They got charged, they got arrested, but next week they're right back into the same activity. Mm-hmm. And so where we come in is we also can, through our connections with different police agencies, use the information they've already obtained through their investigation to help support ours, and then go deal with the landlords. So if it's substantiated, it falls under the SCAN Act, it's drug trafficking or drug activity, drug use at the property. There's some good evidence in that sense from a police source where that will actually help us speed up our investigation. Then we'll take that to the landlords and issue them what's called a warning letter. So that's where we'll get the landlords involved and the owner of the property saying, hey, we've got a complaint, we've got a confidential community complaint. This is what's happening at your property. This is the time that we're coming to you to take some either informal or formal action on your behalf before our unit takes it to court. And that would be in the way of what we call a community safety order.
Okay. And when you guys look at actually enforcing the I don't want to use the word punishment, but the Chris, help me with the word here. I'm trying to say, what actions have you guys taken in the past? Can you guys evict someone from a property? Can you, what's the teeth side of the punishment? I guess.
Well, if you don't mind me interjecting, Mac, back it up. Let's just back that up a little bit. So let's walk it through piece by piece. So right now, the scenario is set up so that you have informed a landlord that they have a problem. An owner of a home, you got a problem on one of your properties. So what's your expectation of the landlord at that point, Andrew?
So at that point, if we've got a cooperative landlord, they'll say, okay, what are the steps I can take? I said, well, it's rental, eviction. You serve your 14-day eviction notice and post it on the door. They don't leave, you got to set your hearing date and then go before your hearing and provide evidence. That's where we'll come in and say, okay. And landlords come back to, well, it's COVID right now. We can't evict people, or I don't have any grounds to evict them. I said, well, that's where I come in and I can assist you. We've got grounds from our investigation that would support your eviction if it were to go to a hearing and they didn't move out at the end of the 14 days. So at the end of those 14 days, they're out of the property. Fantastic. We talked to them about training and putting in better applicants. If they're not out, they have their hearing date set, and we'll call in now with everything through online or through a phone call, and we'll provide our evidence to the owners and the bad guys with our evidence package in support of an eviction. And then at that hearing time, hearing officer will go through it. They'll question us. If the tenants have any questions, they'll also question us. And then at the end of that time, the hearing officer will make his decision whether or not to evict or not.
So
Right. So just like we talked before the show, and people can jump on and comment here, but we have what I refer to as the what did I say, which landlord, what was the term I used, Mac? The not the default landlord, you know what I mean, the landlord who just accidental landlord, that's what I'm looking for. We have the accidental landlords, and then we have the person who has some money, let's buy a property and here's the key and thank you for the money, and they think they're going to make money, and all of a sudden we have these problems come in, and well, what do you mean? How do I evict? What's a 14-day notice? And believe it or not, we do have 2,700 members here, and we do have a lot of people who don't know how to write this stuff up. So what you just said is, look, we're telling you you have a problem. We're telling you you have reason to evict. And rather than saying, well, I don't know what to do, well, you're telling them, I'm going to help you with how to evict somebody. I'm going to help you lay this out with an ABC. So it's bulletproof when it lands before the commissioner at the hearing office, or if you're going to court, to the judge. But you guys are there to help a landlord be successful.
You bet. And we've come across for kind of all levels, and just right from that kind of the example you talk about, we just recently have one of our members that she did everything from start to finish in assisting this landlord with getting these people evicted. She was elderly, didn't have the resources to the same technology that we had, was some language barriers, so wasn't quite fluent, and comfortable speaking with the tenants into regards to why they're being evicted, as well as the hearing office. So we have had members go from start to finish dealing with the whole eviction process, while assisting and having cooperative landlords that are just not quite aware of what the process is. And that's where we're there to help. If we have a landlord that's willing to help, and we want to find that informal solution before we get to court.
okay.
Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to put a little plug in here for we have 3 eviction experts, which is Rob Bonin and Don Gray and Brad Langevay, and each out of their respective business, Calgary, Central Alberta, and Edmonton. And these fellows here, and I hope after the show, you'll be able to, we've built a lot of trust with you, Andrew. You're saying, you'll tell people, say, you need to go find this landlord site on Facebook, because they're all about education. And, we can tie everybody together. And these 3 guys, I know they're watching the show tonight. They're going to say, yeah, they can help do this presentation and work with you as that landlord's agent and lay it out, because you have the language barriers. And I know exactly what you're talking about. You have the older landlord who, that's their income. They've owned this property for 40 years, and that's their part of their monthly income in retirement. And they're just being abused by a bad tenant that got in. So you're willing, so you guys help them. They're still struggling with how to do this paperwork. Are you actually going to file the whole eviction for them or do you get them to do something? So
depending on the one instance with the elderly lady, our member ended up doing everything start to finish. They filled out the paperwork. She went to her property. They went through it all together, signed. The owner signed where she needed to sign, and then at the end of the day, our member ended up serving all the documents and filing all the documents. And then we had it where we have landlords on the other end was like, no, just tell me what to do, but I'm too afraid to go to the property. Do you mind serving the eviction notice? And it's no, that's what we're here for. We go, we're visible, we're kitted up, we're an armed unit, and we'll throw our gear on. Plus, it shows for anybody in the community sees that, okay, this property is being looked at, and we'll go serve the 14-day eviction notice on their behalf.
Yeah, that's great. I like having that not show of force, but show of force that there's
support
and care in the community when you guys come in the door and do that kind of work. One thing I want to circle back to, and you mentioned you do help in this eviction process. Does that both include the provincial court as well as RTDRS?
Yeah, so I've provided evidence at RTDRS hearings as well. for
Awesome.
it. So yeah, and all like so we won't go into provincial court. Ours is going to be anything that of our matters will go through will be RTDRS if we're going to help a landlord with eviction, or we go into Queen's Bench Court to file our community safety order.
Very cool. Awesome.
Okay, so now we've got the cooperative landlord where you're working. Let's go the other way. Mac, we'll try to jump through this, and at the bottom half of the hour, as we start to swing up, let's then get into our questions because a few people have popped them up.
We'll
But,
take questions. Christine's question, I think you're going to go on the opposite side of the scale, right? We're going from cooperative landlord to not so good landlord. So let's take Christine's question in this. So if we've got a bad landlord, Chris, where do you want to go with this one?
So are you going with this question? We have a problem tenant next door to one of our houses, and the landlord refuses to do something about it. So I guess we need to know what the problem is. Is it a drug-related problem, or are they just, a little more description there, Christine, if you could, as to what type of, I think she does further down. If you go down further, she may be.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just clarify some of that specified use offenses too. I'll give you a little bit more of a breakdown. Because we do get calls all the time. Like we'll get calls we see all this property, there's a bike chop shop, and we're like, well, we can't deal with the bike chop shop. You see come and go activity that's consistent with drug trafficking. So this to be a little bit more clear with our specified use activity that's happening that we can investigate. It's going to be trafficking drugs under the CDSA, any sales or consumption under the Liquor Act, GLA, and then prostitution, child sexual abuse, and then gang and criminal organization activity. So most, like I say, 95% of the times it's trafficking at CDSA, so a controlled drugs and substance act. So that's kind of where the main thing falls. If it's property crime, noise complaints, they're a bad neighbor, bylaw related kind of, they're not cutting their grass and they're doing really annoying stuff. Well, unfortunately, that won't fall under our act.
Or fortunately for you, because I don't know if you want to deal with that, but
right. And then there's other services within each municipality which can look after that. It's just be a different call to make.
Okay, I'm going to take this, Chris. So I think this is where you want to go, but I'm thinking this. Give us let's just talk about a broad scenario before we jump into Christine's specifics about problem landlords that aren't cooperative. How do you guys deal with them, and what are the challenges around that situation?
Right. So we'll justify our investigation, as I said, and then we'll issue what's called a warning letter. So that's at that stage, that's when it's coming to the knowledge of that landlord, or I'd say owner. It has to be the owner of the property, that there is a problem and this is what we're seeing. And if they just say, well, I don't care, they're paying their rent, I'm not going to evict them. Okay. I said, well, this is your one chance where we come to you and we try and work on a solution together and find a way to stop what's happening in the community and find more of a, like I said, informal solution. So if they don't, then our investigation continues. We don't tell them, we don't go back and say, hey, we're finding more drug activity happening. No, we gave them that warning. So now we're going to collect all our evidence again and further bolster our case, into which we would want to go towards a community safety order, which we would draft an affidavit with all our evidence. Owner would get a copy, and we file a copy with the courts. And at that time, that's when we're going to be applying for a 90-day closure. So that would be a full closure of the property where everybody is evicted. No tenants are allowed to stay in the house. Boards get put up on all windows, locks get changed, and then a fence goes up around the whole property. Then that stays on the property for 90 days. And then all that expense from an owner that just had tenants in the property, in which had cheaper options or simpler options to solve the problem, is now going to get put with the bill. So all those costs of the closure will now all fall back onto the owner of that property. And usually that runs between your 6 to 10 grand range, depending on your location, size of the property, and how much materials are required.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to say, I mean, it's very advantageous for us to work with you guys, because just explain that scenario you went over there. That's 3 months rent that we're not collecting.
Yeah.
There's damage to the property by hammering nails and boards to the windows and again fenced up. Yeah, like you said, 6 to 10,000 very easily, for sure.
Yeah.
And what about the landlord who has turned a blind eye to it all? And what about, their role in this this problem. Can you tie them to it as a party to the offense sometimes?
So that would be to tie them. To tie them to the specific activity and then deal with that. That would be kind of enjoying what we would do with municipal police force. So if we're looking to go for criminal charges, as well as our community safety order, which has happened numerous times, we'll work with the police of jurisdiction. We'll do our investigation, provide them everything we know, and then they go and they do a search warrant. Now they get charges and arrests. If that owner now shows up into that activity and is observed involved in that activity, then they could be held accountable in that sense. But from the community safety order, that would be all towards the owner.
So I don't know if people realize, and under the acts that you work under, is there a definition for a party to the offense, or is that just our criminal code related?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of for us.
Okay, so
party,
if there's criminal code offenses being laid in this, so that people are aware of, there's a section of the code that has a party to an offense where you, whether directly or indirectly, are aware and allowed to continue or participate in some way, willingly or unwilling. You know, there's just a whole bunch of components to that. You can be drug into this. Not only are you going to get saddled with the bill for the property and the investigation, you're also going to get charged, and you need to be aware of that. So this is why what I've said, and in some of my pre-videos here promoting this tonight's show, is that this is why your cooperation and handing them the key, basically whatever you need, I will do for you, is going to make you or save you a lot of money and a lot of grief. And working with Andrew and his team and whatever municipal police forces become involved, it's critical for you not to be writing a check at the end of the day.
For sure. And at the end of the day, like civil act goes through a balance of proper abilities. That's the standard that we have to meet through the courts. But at the end of the day, since we're always, majority of our files are dealing with police agencies, we're always going beyond a reasonable doubt. So if we're coming to you, it's coming to you with really good evidence, really good grounds, and we're not just jumping the gun ahead of time saying, oh, maybe we'll bluff them and get them out. No, it's because we've done our investigation, we've got grounds to support it, and now we're here approaching you with this problem.
Yeah.
So you bring up, so the point that you bring up too, there's two things. There's a balance of probabilities, and there's also beyond a reasonable doubt. One is much easier to prove than the other. Do you want to explain the difference in that?
Just a lighter threshold, right? So balance of probabilities, I believe that he's doing it, right? And so what our threshold that we need to meet under a civil act is different than what the threshold they need to meet for criminal code. So if you're expecting a criminal code investigation, you're going to have to get A, B, C, and D and make sure that they line up with what you're proceeding for arrest and what you're trying to get granted in your search warrant. And whereas the civil, it's your balance of probabilities is that, this is likely occurring. And this is what is happening. This is the most likely scenario out of the investigation.
And is it reasonable to believe that this is occurring? Yes, based on what you're presenting, anybody in their right mind would believe this.
Yeah.
So that's a balance of probabilities. Beyond a reasonable doubt, if there's that much of a little bit of a doubt that, well, that might not have happened, then they can punt it out under the criminal code. But under these provincial statutes, it's so much easier, much easier for you. And back in the day when I write tickets, we have dangerous driving, for example, under the criminal code, and we have careless driving under the provincial statutes. 9 times out of 10, we'd lean back towards the provincial statutes because we know that the courts would hammer them much harder at a provincial level than trying to get it up into a criminal code level. And because that one little thing could get it kicked out for you. So when these guys come in, like Andrew and his team, you want to work with them because they're your saving grace.
For sure.
So let's take a swing at some of the questions, but I'm going to sneak in front of the line and ask mine first. How would I, as a concerned community member, actually get a hold of you guys? What's the process to report or to put a request into you guys?
Right. So we are through. So you can Google us, scan, and you can either call our 1-800 number, and then we also have a website. So the big thing, you're a confidential community complainant. So any information that you share with us, your name, your address, your phone number, that is always confidential. That does not leave our file. It doesn't get disclosed in courts, and that's where you are the starting point for us to move our investigation ahead. So whether you call into our toll-free number and trying to look for it here and blanking out on it.
That's okay. What we'll do is I'll give you some time after. We'll find that and we'll post in the group for you.
For sure. So, and then that's the big ticket thing that we need. We need that community complainant that is being affected in the community. They actually live there. They see it on a daily basis, that they're afraid something is going to happen. It changes their daily routine of how they use their property or their community, and they want to call into us or submit a web online complaint.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, maybe we'll tackle Christine's question first, since we kind of started talking about it. So she starts off. Let's go from the first question to the second point here. So yeah, we have a problem tenant next door to one of our houses, and the landlord refuses to do something about it. And then her second point to that is continual drug use and noise complaints. I have 4 neighbors that have complaints for one house, and while I talk to the landlord, he says call the police.
Yeah, so in that situation, if you can promote your tenants to call and report and start a file for us, because unfortunately, if you're the owner and you know what's happening and you don't live there, in rare circumstances we've started files, but like I said, we need that component of a community person being affected. So if you can convince your tenants to call into the scan line or submit online and let them know it's 100% confidential. They're just giving us the information to get the ball started. Under our act, the judges hold very little weight in regards to confidential complainants, in regards to the evidence they supply us or they give us. So at the end of the day, we still have to do our full investigation and support it, and we'll be moving forward off of what we find, not what the complainant is telling us, but they're just getting us rolling and pointing in the right direction.
So you raised a good point there. I want to add on that, or just understand better. So what if I'm a landlord here in Calgary? I've got rentals in different communities in Calgary. So when you say from a community perspective, is local in Calgary enough, or local within the same street, or actual defined community?
Defined community within that community that that they're being affected.
Okay.
So that's kind of, and so the big thing in our act is it's got to be habitual. So that activity is habitual, and that definition, which we're learning, is by each justice within the Queen's Bench Court has a different opinion of what habitual is, right?
Fair
and
enough.
So what we have to do is make sure and prove, hey, this is something it's not a one-time occurrence, that it's happening on a regular basis, whether it's weekly, daily, and that habitual component is being met.
Okay. So it's the key takeaway I'm hearing from you on the habitual side. It's reoccurring, and there's some sort of defined frequency that you guys can confirm.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Okay. Chris, or do you want to take this next?
Well, let's grab some questions up above. Christine's Christine did say, I have videos of some of the problems. That's good, Christine. If you do, that's something when you want to put a complaint in and what the problems you're describing. And Andrew, if you could just repeat, just in point form, what are the problems that you cover again? Drugs?
So drug trafficking, prostitution, if they're making illegal alcohol and selling it, basically,
Nice.
which is not really, like, it's under the act, but it's not something I've never come across it. I've been in the unit for the last 5 years. We do come across lots of gang and organized criminal activity, so that also falls under it. But I'd say 95% of the time it's going to be drug trafficking, drug activity occurring at the property, which includes use, right? So if you have that drug use is bringing in a drug dealer or dealer, Getting into the neighborhood, they're finding their way to get their drugs, and if they're bringing it to the house, then that still affects the neighborhood.
What about Youth Tobacco Act? Does any of that fall under you?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. And any what was the other thing with the new laws relative to cannabis usage? I guess if you can show they're trafficking in cannabis, but
so when they took cannabis out of the CDSA, it was no longer enforceable under our act because our act hadn't been amended at the time to include weed. So since weed was removed from the CDSA and our act read that controlled substance under the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act, then we were no longer able to enforce any trafficking with weed. They've been since working on that to include it. So I'd have to go back and confirm through our latest emails, but I believe that that's been resolved in the form of trafficking. Obviously not use, but the trafficking of it. And I believe that they are trying to do an amendment to make sure that they do include that.
Okay, cool. Let's grab some questions, Mac.
Yeah, you basically, it's going to exactly go with that question. Where does the weed fall into this picture? So, no, thanks for clearing that up. Okay, so.
And that's I guess if they're exceeding the number of plants that you're allowed to grow, again, that would be not under you guys either, would it?
No, so that would be still under the other act or Health Canada, depending on what they're enforcing and if they've got a permit to grow.
Right. If somebody did put it through scan, will you flip it up through to the proper authorities to deal with, or do you bounce it back to the complainant?
We'll usually shoot it through our team and have a bit of a group discussion about it and see if there is a spot of where we can send them to, or at least direct the complainant in the right direction, and not just leave them hanging and with no information to move forward.
Perfect.
Okay, so if it was something, say in Edmonton, you wouldn't talk to EPS or Edmonton City Police and tell them, hey, here's the information we received, and then switch it over to their jurisdiction to deal with?
Yeah, we can do that as well. Like we've over the years, we've built up a good community base of knowing members within the city and I guess connections, and so it is something where we have a good variety of members all throughout the city that we could reach out to and propose these questions. Say, hey, this is what we have. Is this something you're interested in, or you have more information on how I can direct our complainants forward, or is this something you guys want to take on? But we do definitely do a lot of collaboration with police and EPS. Like we're outside of Edmonton, and we're gaining really good new connections through northern Alberta with the RCMP, because this last year we've had more rural files than we've ever had. So we're traveling all the time.
Oh, okay. That kind of led into my next question is, do you guys have a home base in Alberta? Do you guys operate out of multiple cities? What does that look like for you guys?
So we have two teams, one in Calgary and one in Edmonton. And then, so we're basically, Edmonton is north of Red Deer and Calgary is Red Deer and south. And so that's where it gets tricky, because we do get rural files and we do have to travel, and we are restricted by a budget, but we take complaints from everywhere and we go travel. Today we were in Athabasca. On Friday we'll be in Whitecourt. Next week we're in Rocky Mountain House. Grand Prairie is a big one, Fort McMurray, St. Paul. So we've been all across the province, and if you have a complaint, then it will get put into our file queue and we'll investigate it.
No, that's awesome. That's great to hear that you guys got presence across the board. So we'll take a question off the chat here. Trish asked this one. This was before that you had kind of mentioned. She asked us right at the beginning of the show, so I think we've kind of want to answer this, but we'll take it anyways. We are having trouble with homeowners next door to two of my rental properties. They hassle the tenants. Is there anything I can do to advocate for my tenants? Trish, can you provide some more clarity? She's got another comment here. They believe they are homeowners and their needs come above my tenants. So that sounds like maybe disputes between two neighbors.
Well, I guess you want, just go back to that, Trish, is you want to find out what do you mean when they say they're hassling them? What do they do? What is that person's issue with your tenant? And if that person's being a bully, depending on what the community standards are, you may have a bullying bullying scenario that comes under bylaws. If there's some communities do have a bullying bylaw, and it may even go as far as a harassment issue that can be bumped up into the police end of things. But for Andrew's case here, it's not something I don't believe you'll be dealing with, right, Andrew?
Not with that. That would be considered, yeah, we'd call it a neighbor dispute, and they would have to settle it themselves formally, or if there's something where the police of jurisdiction needs to get involved, that's who they call.
There you go. Trish, you know us. You can get a hold of me after the show, and I would certainly talk to you further about that. So what's your next one, Mac?
This one just came in. I don't know, Chris, if you can give me a name to the Facebook user. Is there any way of knowing whether people have an illegal grow up versus where the government allows them to grow?
So for us, it would be contacting the police of jurisdiction and then or Health Canada. And sometimes we've run into just because of our classifications under a peace officer, Health Canada doesn't always like to release that information to us. So we tend to go through dealing with the police.
Okay.
Yeah, that is something you want to let your local police know about if you think, but also as a property owner, you want to start writing in your lease agreements as to what can and can't be done in your property. And if somebody says, well, yeah, I'm going to be growing about 150 plants because I have a license. Well, you have to think about the humidities involved, the smells that are involved, and how that's going to linger in your house. And you know what? If somebody wants to do that, you may want to have a premium, if you're going to let them in there, a premium pricing for your rental, because you're going to have damage, and that damage can be from smell to mold and mildews, because it takes quite a bit to grow a plant.
Yeah, sure.
You may not want to include electricity in that contract.
I think we kind of hammered through most of it, to be honest. I'll take a look here. Have I missed anything else?
Let's go back to that hoarder one there. They're a little further up there. Says somebody said that they have a severe hoarder. I know this isn't one of yours, Andrew, but we'll just address it because it came up here. So that's Tammy Lind. She says she has a severe hoarder in one of her rentals and is be deemed a fire hazard. So again, that'll go back to your health and safety aspects, your bylaws. Do you think of any provincial statutes, Andrew, just because you're still working in the industry that might help out there?
So another unit that we work with as well that kind of gets tied in that we don't really do a lot. Well, we work with and we do a lot. It's called in Edmonton, it's called the risk team. So it's a residential inspection, safety, and compliance unit. And basically, it's a unit comprised of Edmonton Fire, Edmonton Police, Alberta Sheriffs, Alberta Health, AHS, there's a nurse on it, and then different bylaw agencies. So that is if it's in Edmonton. I'm not sure what they have. I believe they have something similar in Calgary, but that's in a sense of where maybe it is already an open investigation file for us, or they have it gets brought forward for them. But they'll go out and do they'll go do inspections of different properties that pop up on their list that they have complaints on. And they'll go in, they'll serve them notice that they're coming to do an inspection. They'll give the tenants and the owners notice. And then that way they can actually file documents saying, okay, this does not meet your codes. And these are the steps that you need to take to correct what is wrong and deficient with your building. And if it's fire hazards or it's windows, it's the easement, if it's the yard stuff, if it's there's drugs inside and we see there's drugs inside and we were granted permission and it's in plain sight, then it's something we can use towards our investigation. So we do have something unique like that in Edmonton.
Great. So Don Gray from Edmonton Eviction Services, he's had experience in this. He's posted on here, so you can get a hold of Don. He can help you out. He'll give you some direction. And if not, he'll handle it for you. Just tee up with him. And you want to be on top of that stuff because you'll have infestations, you'll have water damages. There's a lot more can go on with a hoarding situation than just the fact that there's a pile of junk there. So
I think the biggest thing we start to see with a lot of our investigations in our properties is just the fact that, okay, I've got a tenant in the property and they're paying me rent. So that is good enough, and that meets the standard of what I need to do with my own property. I think the landlords listening and owners out there, they need to be more accountable for what shape their property is in and take more initiative on doing their inspections, giving notice saying, hey, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a inspection on the property, and hold those tenants accountable, because that's within your right to do. And just not sign a lease agreement and walk away and expect that all these tenants are just going to take care of your property.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely, I'd say, the mandate of what this community is about, and the landlords that we have on here. We're always trying to do better, and that's exactly up our alley and street. So appreciate that. Do you see some common misfalls by landlords or common mistakes that people make when they report to you, or do you got any kind of tips that can, if someone is going to report to you, if they've got maybe pictures or certain details that make make it easier to open up a case with you guys?
Yeah, so the one thing we always talk about with videos and photos is that you are a confidential complainant. So anything you send us, so if you send me a photo or a video of a hand-to-hand drug deal happening in the back alley from your garage video security camera, I can't use that, because that now, if I use it, it's now going to disclose where it came from. And then anything we disclose, the bad guys, the owners, they're going to get a copy of that, right? So now when it comes down to owner-occupied properties that we deal with versus tenants, then chances are maybe the tenants won't get a copy of it. But can you trust that owner? Can we trust that owner by sharing that information? And I would say maybe, maybe not, but it would still jeopardize the confidentiality of our complainant, and that's our priority.
You know, and I want to speak to that, because after 25 years of policing, I have many people who wanted to, well, can I remain confidential? I just, you know, I'm scared of it. But the whole scared thing is more towards the system than the individual, is what I found. And if I sit there and I tell them, say, look, I'm here to support you. Yes, I'm investigating your complaint, but I'm also here to support you. If you're going to have a problem with this individual, I assure you, and Andrew, I'm sure you're going to say the same. They're now interfering with a witness, which really ups the ante and turns it from Andrew's, your guys' investigation from Provincial. Now they've upped it into criminal because they're interfering with a witness. And I would back you 110%. If you want to take a stand as a complainant and you want that information, and I need to use that, I'll support you. As Andrew would, his team will support you. So don't be afraid to stand up for what's right. Just because the bad guy or girl is making a lot of noise, you have to remember 90% of their yap is 10% of their yap is 90% of what they are, and that's all they got. So sometimes you need to stand up for yourself in order to stand up for other people in the situation. And that's what Andrew and his team needs, is for you to stand up for yourself, and he will support you. Don't expect law enforcement to be able to do everything just because, well, I saw this, can you guys do something? Well, you know what? We need a bit more. We need your help. And when law enforcement puts out their media, their information to the media saying, look, call us, we need your help to solve these problems. That's essentially what they're saying, is saying, we need you to take a stand, and we'll stand beside you if you stand beside us, and we'll deal with these problems. Yes, we can deal with some things on a confidential way, and we can do surveillance, and we can do those things, but that resource is very taxing on the system to put surveillance in there. But if you'll come in with your video, like was just described, say, here's a video, and yes, I took it, and yes, I will go to court and say I took it. Well, you know what? It's a runaway for Andrew and his team at that point, because they got good, cold evidence, and that they can run with it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is stand up for yourself, so people like Andrew and his team can stand up for you.
So my question, I want to add on to what you just said there, Chris and Andrew, is let's say I capture some evidence, or I can start a case for you. I don't mind being disclosed. Can you then take that evidence and use it more directly, I guess, if that makes sense?
I guess it depends on how much it supports, and then whether or not it is actually required, or if we have evidence from ourselves that, okay, that was just the starting point and we substantiate it, and we know we don't need that anymore because we have firsthand observed that activity at the property. Say we're struggling to gather that evidence, and that's maybe a piece that we're missing, then that's something we would have to discuss with our lawyers. But definitely, typically, it would not If it's something that's going to disclose anything to identify the complainant and breach their confidentiality, it's typically left out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know that.
Yep.
We got
Yep.
a good sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead. No, I just was agreeing on, and I'm a proponent of helping you stand up for your rights as, when I was in the business, and I would support you. If I had your support, I will back you 110%.
Perfect.
However, like Andrew said, if we can do this without you, we will. But you know what, if they come back to you, or if you can say, hey, look, this is who I am. Here's my name, contact me. I'll give you everything you need, but I need to be staying confidential. That can stay confidential and they'll dig from there. But man, oh man, if you can take a stand and you're willing to go to the court and say, this is what I saw, that'll be the final nail and make their case that much easier. So
yeah. So this is a great question from Grant. Grant, I love this question. Would a cooperative landlord be able to keep the tenant's damage deposit once the tenant has been evicted as a means of compensation for lost rent, or would the tenant have to take other legal means? So let's say we've got an example here, Andrew. There's been enough evidence you guys have gathered to be able to evict the tenant. From a financial perspective with the cooperative landlord, what options do we have?
I guess so that would still be something separate than what we would deal with the SCAN Act, but I guess it would fall back onto the information with that situation. So did they damage the property? Does it fall in which they can withhold giving their damage deposit back? So that would be something separate from what our unit would deal with. And that would be, something specific that landlord would have to judge based off of what state is their property in. Are they going to have to use that damage deposit to fix everything up? And 9 times out of 10, all the properties we're in, there's no damage deposit getting returned because most of them are destroyed.
Okay. And I'm just thinking out loud, if you guys come in and you guys have a case of Eviction, which is going to be a very solid case, I would just see myself as a landlord if I was in that position. I would take your guys' evidence and pursue my own eviction through RTDRS or pursue a judgment, for those damages through either, Queen's Court of Bench if it warrants that, or through RTDRS. And would I be able to use your guys' evidence to back up my claim for a judgment?
Yeah, because I believe you guys, Chris and MacKenzie, might correct me if I'm wrong, but if we've had photographs of the inside of property that's completely damaged that has been submitted on the evidence, and if the hearing officer grants the eviction and grants them that they don't have to return, they have to pay rent, what's left owing, and then withhold a damage deposit, and the owner can keep it. That leave can be granted all at that hearing if it goes to that point.
Yeah. So you're right. We can go after obviously damages. We can keep the damage deposit, and we can also get a judgment for lost rent. But typically, when we've gone and gotten to the point, and I know Dawn, you're listening too, so correct me if I'm wrong, but if we've gone to the point where we have to go to get a judgment or go to RTDRS for a eviction, at that point in time when the hearing's been taken place, is typically where they draw a line in the sand. Okay, you guys have the intent. We want them. Our intention is we want these people evicted. Therefore, any rent after that, we can't really go after because we're now evicting them. We can collect up to rent owed up to that point, and usually we can go after damages, and it's our responsibility according to the Residential Tenancies Act that we have to put reasonable efforts to rent out the unit as soon as possible. So again, this is very situation dependent, but if there's a situation where there's a damaged property and it takes us 1 month to fix, we could probably go after that 1 month's rent, maybe 2, but that again would be very dependent on who the hearing officer is.
Mm-hmm.
Did I hit that one right, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? They're out they only got, by the time you get them out, if you get 10 days left of a month or something, I'm sure that damage deposit can be eaten up quite quickly with the expenses you've incurred as a result of what's been going on.
Yeah.
So, you know what? It's a little bit of creativity in your writings and stuff. And you know what? At the end of the day, leave it up them to challenge you for it. I would say 9.9% of the time they're not going to. 9.99% of the time they're not going to. They're not going to challenge you for it. So
yeah. So is this? I'm guessing Barbara.
That was me asking Don to clarify what he had to say up there. So.
Oh, I think he meant to say the RTA. RTA has rules for the security deposit.
Oh, okay,
That's all.
there you go.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's good. We've hit all the buttons there. What we'll do for you folks is we'll get some information from Andrew how to register a complaint with his unit and how to get a hold of them. We'll collect that information for you guys.
And I got that now, Chris, too, as well. If you're
sure.
I did find it. So if you want me to spout it out or you want to post it for them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you know what? Let's go through it right now, and then I'll also post it again on the group as well.
Okay, so if you guys want to call in through the phone and you're not as tech savvy, then you can call our complaint line. It's 1-866-960-7226. So it's 1-866-960-SCAN. And then
say that again. Can you just say the phone number again?
I got it on the screen.
Yeah, and he's got it bang on. And then
Okay,
so our website will be www.scan.alberta.ca.
And you're going to put that up too, Mac?
Not fast enough yet.
Yeah, he's typing it in as we go here, Andrew. This is good because it'll be on there for good. There you go, folks. There's your two numbers that you can reach out to get some help. And you know what? Feel free to reach out to myself or MacKenzie or any of one of our eviction specialists, and we'll direct you accordingly how to get a hold of SCAN. And you know, we'll work together as a team, and that's what we'll work together as a community, and that's what we're trying to produce for you here is a community-based resolution to any of our problems that we come through.
Absolutely.
That come through.
Andrew, I'll throw one more question. One thing I like to do with all our guests when they come on the show and they give their time is I usually like to give you guys a bit of an opportunity to do a plug for maybe a charity or a passion project or just anything that's of importance to you that you want to bring awareness to. I forgot
before you do that, Mac, I've been dying to ask this question. I know where you're going with this because we're about to shut down the show, but Andrew, can you give us one war story for the people of a concluded file? Like, give us a good one if you can think of one where all hell broke loose, and let people understand how well you guys work for the clients.
Good point.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll give one a kind of a positive one in the retrospect of a cooperative owner, since people are on this show to kind of help and get knowledge and learn for themselves versus the ones that are kind of being ignorant. So I recently had a file about a month ago, in which I was reached out. I had about 6 different community complainants, and all are complaining about 30 to 40 people in and out of this property in an hour.
Wow.
So we get contacted by EPS, the downtown's beat, saying they're also interested in the property. Given the climate with the police right now, it's tough to get extra units for surveillance, so they asked for our assistance, and so we provided assistance on our end and worked with them as well. This one, before I even started the investigation, I was just opening the file, and the owner of the property, actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, this is what's happening at my property. All my neighbors are mad. What can you do to help me? I want your help. I need your help. So what can I do? I don't know what to do." I said, "For sure, we're here to help." So this house, we sat and investigated, and it was, no word of a lie, the busiest house I've ever seen. We would probably only watch it for about an hour to 2 hours, just because there was so much activity and observations within those times just to do our notes and record everything. Took forever. But this house, we'd have people go in, they'd do their hand-to-hand either in front of the house or go inside the house, and then they'd leave. And then almost every person that we took away within the neighborhood would stop. So here's now the community effect. They go into this house, they're in and out in a quick time, within less than a minute. They come out and they walk a half a block down, away from the property, still within that community, pull out their drugs, sit down in the alley, and now they're starting to smoke up their meth. And they're dropping all their drugs into their pipes. And kids are walking by, people on bikes, and huge effect of them. Now then they get up and now they're loitering and walking around the community high, looking for a place to stay and or steal stuff. And that's what we saw as well in this file. Needless to say, we did 3 days of surveillance. EPS had more than enough grounds to grant a search warrant on the property. They did a search warrant, found drugs and cash inside, tons of people. The whole property was destroyed. It was recently renovated prior to these tenants. The outside was well done. And owner was super happy. Evicted everybody, gave a 24-hour emergency eviction, and then changed the locks at the end of it. She boarded everything up herself. And then we had also a risk inspection. So this is that other safety compliance unit we were using. We went in after the warrant and did an inspection on the property, and it was disgusting. It was a mess. We had to climb through a window to get in, and just to search, we ended up finding somebody hiding out and sleeping in there. So we had to kick them out. And at the end of the day, positive scenario where police are involved, risk team was involved, our unit, a super cooperative landlord, 6 community members that were being affected on the daily. And within a week, it was actually probably within 2 weeks, we were open and shut with this file. And that's kind of like not always the case. Sometimes they take months, but that was a huge win for multiple agencies working together to find a solution for this community.
Awesome. And you said start to finish, you guys were able to nail that out in 2 weeks or less?
It was about 2 weeks, because when I got in contact with the Edmonton police, they already had their investigation going. They were kind of at the tail end of where they needed a few more days of grounds of surveillance for evidence just to put the nail on the coffin for their warrant. And they did it and had great results and arrested and charged a bunch of people from within the property, and owner evicted them. And now it's being completely renovated and demoed.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing to hear. A good win for you guys. That's awesome here, and really bodes well for our landlord community, knowing that you guys have that kind of teeth that you can come in and affect change quickly when there's a problem going on related to illegal activity at a property. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's the one common factor we get brought up with our complaints is, well, what's going to happen to the people doing the criminal activity? Like, you're dealing with the owners. It's like, well, that's where we like to get EPS involved, so that these people aren't getting away scot-free and just getting kicked out of a property, right? Like, that there is some sort of enforcement on them as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a really well-rounded approach that you guys have taken when you guys cooperate with the other law enforcement units, which I think makes you guys a bit different than just going straight to CPS or RCMP per se for a problem. So we're going to wrap it up now, I guess. Chris, is there anything you want to add in before I try wrapping it up?
No, I got that little. I wanted to hear a war story, because those are what people want to hear, and they want to hear the success ones. So no, you go with your final pitch here, Mac, and we'll shut her down.
Cool, awesome. Andrew, we really appreciate your time coming out and hanging out with us for the last hour to kind of help us learn more about what you guys do at SCAN and how we can help out as landlords work with you guys. So that's great information. What I've mentioned before, so maybe you got some time to think about it, is I love to give everyone an opportunity to plug something that's important to them. So if you've got maybe a charity or a passion project that you can share with our community, now's your time to do that if you've got something you'd like to share.
I'm just a big proponent of youth sports. So that's where my winter and summers are spent, is promoting youth sports. And I know our hockey schedule this year and lacrosse for our kids, everything was canceled. Yeah. And just getting the individuals and the kids out to play, right? And that's kind of the big thing with this program, is that community safety aspect and providing a safe play for community kids to go out, less fortunate at all levels, to be able to go and play. My association in White Mud West is really great for that. For hockey, they do a great job of leftover fees being donated to a local charity that will supply equipment and pay for registration fees. And last year, our team was able to donate the leftover cash call to able to help that out. So that's always a win.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Chris, is there anything else we want to wrap up with here?
No, Andrew, just stick around after we close the show out here, and we'll talk in the back room here. So,
sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, one last question: Edmonton or Montreal?
Edmonton.
How many games?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not on my phone right now, and it's buzzing. So I'm going to say 6 games. Edmonton in 6.
Oh, there you go. Calgary won their mini series with Vancouver. That didn't mean anything, so it's done today.
Yeah.
So. Fantastic. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Andrew, for the show. We'll wrap it up. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you guys next Wednesday at 7 p.m.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.